Herzlich willkommen bei Pixels and Profit. Ich bin Basti. Mit meinem Kollegen Sam sprechen wir heute mit Marcus Knight. Marcus ist Head of UX bei N26, Digitalbank. Und wir sprechen mit ihm über Daten. Das begleitet ihn sein ganzes Leben lang, vom Basketballprofi bis hin jetzt über Adidas zu N26. Ich bin sehr gespannt, was ihr sagt. Viel Spaß mit der Folge. Sam.
Yeah, Sebastian.
So it's the first episode in English.
It's the first episode in English and in Berlin as well.
In Berlin as well. It will be a fun one. We'll talk about data. We'll talk about data with a person who is basically working with data ever since, because first working as an athlete, then as a professional UX expert in various fields, various companies with data. Super welcome. Super happy to have you here, Marcus. So I wanna directly jump into the discussion. So you're coming from Adidas to GFK, now working in N26. Everything's connected to data. I was asking myself, is data always the same when it comes to user experience design? And how is that changing during the years?
Oh wow! Straight in with the hard ones.
Yeah.
Is data the same? At its essence, yes, because data is giving you signals to do something for the user, whether that's more of something or less of something. Data just gives you a signal to understand what that is. And essentially, as a UX designer, data is reducing risk. Now, could be controversial. You could ignore the data and still just release something. But again, you would go with a very experimentational mindset to do that. But data essentially, it doesn't change from company to company. That's always been the basis. What do we do? Okay, let's look at the data. Like, what can we like pull from that data to understand what's the next steps to take, how we can get more users or how we can not, retain our users. It really depends on the company, the product. Some companies I work for, it's been the seasonality, it goes up and down. So yeah, it's interesting.
Because we've been talking about that before the recording, and we had the topic as well as when we drove to Berlin, was I sometimes struggle with, like, if I use certain products, the digital world or services, I sometimes have the feeling that, like, companies that work on products, I can refer to the fitness app that I'm using, that they sometimes, like, the more data they have, the harder for them it is to, like, cut on what they would like to present or to the user and use for the user. And I can imagine that this is sometimes, like, that it is harder for someone that is working on a product for quite some time to just say, well, okay, we have to cut 90% off in terms of what we show to the user, because it's just not relevant and it is maybe not influencing the experience in a positive way. Because you can get overwhelmed with so much stuff that's happening. Is it something that you observe as well in your day-to-day work? Or?
Yeah, 100%. Again, there's so many data points you can capture that we do capture. I'm not saying N26 is doing that, but most companies I work with, we have a lot of data points, and the sad truth is data can be used for evil as well. So depending on the agenda or the company strategy, if you want to frame it that way, it can be used to also push a different narrative that may not necessarily be what the user wants, but it could be a short-term fix to make some quick money. It sounds bad, but unfortunately, sometimes businesses they have to do that in order to keep operating. It's just a necessary evil. What I found is really useful and is something that I echo today, is the data that you do have is that you don't throw it away, you park it somewhere and you revisit this every roadmap session you have, or every planning or yearly cycles you do. don't lose that, because that data is going to be valuable someday. And most companies I work for, they tend to throw away, and it's not part of our strategy. So yeah,
I can imagine that was also something that I thought about. Is I mean, I can only talk from my experience, and I think if there's like very often if there's a project and you work on that, regardless if it's data or some other things, like project's done, like data is used to some degree, and then the rest of it's just, as you said, thrown away. Like, how do you make sure that data that is captured at some point, that this is like kept, and also kept in an accessible, like formatted and organized way, so that at some point, if you say, well, okay, let's do like some kind of brainstorming for, I don't know, like new products or whatever, that we can like access that like knowledge, which could potentially also be revenue, or like like that is it's valuable, right?
Yeah. So one thing I've learned to do a lot more later on is finding a business analyst or a data analyst, and the insights that we get from the research or whatever tool we're using to track data, you make we call them how might we's or HMWs.
Yeah.
You create those and you attach what the potential impact is. Now you're going to need a business analyst to do that. Yeah. And you park that in, if you've got Jira, great, that's even better. You have a backlog, you park it there, and you make that part of the ritual in your, depending on how often you do your yearly planning or half a year, whatever. You make sure that you're looking at these all the time. So it's a bit of work to get those tickets into shape where, because for example, I could leave the company, but you would want someone else to take over.
What happened there? Yeah.
Right. They can just dive in and just read the whole story behind it, but not too much of it. So that's something that I've baked into my rituals a bit more, but you just have to get the tickets in a good enough shape that it can just be accessed. So it's a bit of work.
So would you say every good UX designer at least needs access to a data analyst, to data at all, or is it a plus, or is it necessary?
I think it's well, interesting. You gotta be careful what I say. don't kill me, UX.
No.
We can cut that out later on. Yeah. if it's too.
No, it's more to the UX industry. So I think it's essential as a UX practitioner to have access to data, to understand it on a very fundamental level, negative, pluses, etc. You should know about that. If you have a business analyst, that is a massive plus, because the learning curve to breaking down the data, and you'll hear a lot of data scientists, etc., say this: data's not good, it's not great, we can't read it. You're going to need that extra help to just break it down a bit more. So it's definitely a plus to have an analyst, but it's essential you understand what data is. Otherwise, any PM stakeholder can tell you, do that, because I think it's amazing. You need to understand the impact of your work and the impact you'll have on the business. And I think that's something designers are still trying to figure out how they get a lot closer to that. Historically, designers were the guys that paint things, they make it look great, wonderful, and if we want to get away from that, you have to start understanding the language of business. You need to talk that way.
What I thought, what you said was interesting, because we assume, because you said if you want to move away from that, I mean, that assumes designers want to move away from only being like the creative ones, because I can imagine if you've like data's objective, right? So if you have a great idea and you have a vision in your mind and you think like, well, okay, that's awesome. Like that's a great idea. You think about it, you like your idea, like it's yours, it's your baby, you think it's great. And then there's like data coming in and it's like, okay, you're going to scrap that. And if I can imagine, if you're not like a really experienced person, you could be like, yeah, but I think it's great. So, we should do it like,
I know better than the users.
And I know better than the like. I think it's and data, at least from my perception, I can imagine, like it's very often it's not perceived as something that helps creativity. I can imagine.
Oh, it's an interesting.
Data. If I think like the way I associate it is like, it's very technical. It's very restricting. It's it's not really like something that fosters creativity.
I think it's enabling as well. So it's the way how you're looking at data. So basically, so
jumping back in time. So when I take a look at sports, so you could say, so I have a lot of data that performance is not good, blah 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 blah, and I could say, okay, I can't do anything, or it's basically killing my business model, or it could be an enabler to say, okay, I should focus on that, be creative there. So I think it's an enabler.
Yeah, I would agree. For designers to understand data, one, it gives them signals to understand what move do I make now, and it helps with strategy. But in terms of creativity, I would say it's slightly separated. But once you've understood, okay, the data's telling me this, okay, jump back to the creative side. Okay, what do I do to achieve this target? So, but the reason why I'm harping on about it's great to understand data is so you can have conversations with those people that make those decisions. So you're data savvy. I wouldn't expect a designer to have a really heavy conversation around data that on your level, but on a very fundamental level, you can merge his idea or their idea with what impact it could have on a business. And now you're looking at the conversation differently as opposed to, that shade of red is not really my color. And it just changes it up a bit.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely agree.
Yeah, and it makes the discussion like moves it away from being subjective, more like to an objective, evaluation of okay, how much impact does that have? Is that like at N26 or also your roles before? Was that something that where you felt like, well, okay, this is also something in terms of the company culture is there, or is that something where you feel like, well, okay,
it has to be built.
It has to be built, like it because you're used to that. Like, is that something that the rest of the companies, organizations that you've came across, where you felt like, well, okay, we gotta like educate people on that, or like try to help them see the value of it as well?
I haven't been at a company where that's really that culture is strong. It is from like product managers and business analysts, so they should be. Yeah. But from design side, they're very happy just living in the craft. And I can't remember what the term is, but when someone has a high signal of how people's personalities are, and when you can really see people listening to when you're speaking, I really started to look at the PMs, the business analysts, the CEOs, and what type of conversations were they having where they really, they listen, they sat up in their chair, and it's like, that's interesting. And it was always around, obviously, the higher up you go, it's the P&L, like, how is this work affecting the P&L? And I started to look at that and wonder, interesting. How can we connect the dots? Started listening to more podcasts, a lot of YouTube videos, and the business of design. For about 4 or 5 years, this became a massive thing, and every content creator was talking about it. And then for me, it kind of stuck with me, and then it was really about understanding how they're doing it. But in reality, it's not always that easy, because you're pretty much a novice when it comes to talking about business metrics, the whole idea of business with a business professional. Like if they also speak to you about design, you go, this guy talking about. It's a similar thing. So you're pretty much starting from zero, and you just have to build up that knowledge and that trust. Probably start with your PM, then you start with the directors, and then you got to get comfortable talking about it also. So that's kind of a theme that's followed me also in my career. So yeah.
Do you think that your past as a professional, semi-professional basketball player, did that help you?
Oh, 100%. Because basketball is very simple. It's very primal. It's pretty much about you score more points than the other team, you win. And that mentality, it's always with me. You always want to win. And going back to my time at Shopify, I had a manager who's also very similar. She also was a professional player. So the way she spoke to me was like harsh, like, come on, motivate, let's go, we're going to win. So it's like, yeah, I love this. Yeah. So the point I'm trying to make, that when you talk about numbers, is that you want to win, and whatever the team is planning on doing, or the company's planning on doing, you want to mobilize the team, get together again, a huddle, and you like, there's the target, we got to run to it. So
I was more coming from the direction, having your as is and having your goal, and basically having a coach at your side explaining you, okay, you need to perform this and this and this, which is actually an action plan, which is actually based on numbers, on performance. Do you think
is that heavily tracked in sports?
Yeah,
like, is that, Because I mean, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Like, I think I played football for 18 years, and I was far from being like
but that's football,
professional.
But soccer. So that's soccer. It's completely different thing.
Okay.
Basketball, at least, even in lower leagues, you're now having full digital tracking. So it's quite interesting. It's
really?
A lot of data.
I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah. And Marcus played Pro B in Germany and
Bundesliga, yeah.
Bundesliga.
EMBV, Ludwigsburg.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Shout out.
Hola.
Yeah. It's now Riesen, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it's heavily tracked, so it's crazy.
Like so you have like some sensors like on.
No, cameras.
Not that bad. It's mainly the cameras.
Yeah.
When you go in and out of the game, they track your number coming in, the minutes you play, how much you score, how much you foul, how much you miss.
Okay.
How the team performs, or what is your average plus minus and things.
Okay, so there's no so there's no like.
And at least
I'm good with the coach, and like I'm gonna play the first.
Yeah, well, you could play a lot of minutes and then not produce much.
Okay.
You're gonna know about it. Your plus minus score is gonna be very high or low.
Yeah.
So to your question, how it helps in my career, basketball is very instant. So if you are performing good, you're gonna know about it right away. Whereas in the work environment, it takes a little bit longer to actually realize someone might not be performing or underperforming, and it just gives you more of an understanding of how you are right now. So it gives you a snapshot in time. But also it's good when you have conversations with your direct reports or you want to get feedback about yourself, because you just want to know how you're performing, right? And it's kind of going around in circles, but it's good to understand what the end goal is because you want to win, right? But your coach can tell you right away, Marcus, you've played 20 minutes, you've scored 1 point, you're ahead to score. So that kind of reinforces the expectations. And that's kind of what I take into my everyday role even at 26 is these are the expectations. This is where you are now. That's where the goal is. And it's kind of like a product design loop. You're just going back and forth all the time.
Yeah, I wanted to like follow up on your question, on your question on what you said regarding like that's how you know in basketball you know immediately what's like when you're performing, when you're underperforming, and in business it's like you have like I don't know a certain time that it takes to realize okay what we did like had a positive or negative impact on XYZ. How do you like? Is there a mechanical like? How do you make sure that this is like that specific task or action that we did? Is that reviewed in like a certain time frame, or is it just like happening on regular basis in terms of the iteration of products and services that you're doing, or is that like where you say, well, okay, we got to look at that in 3 months from now to like check back on specific that.
Glad you asked that. I love the parallel between basketball. So in a basketball game, you've got 48 minutes in the NBA, but that's your time frame. And within that time frame, the coach is checking like each quarter. Yeah. Okay, you're doing good. That's not so good. It's the same in like in the design industry. You probably would check on the company KPIs on a monthly basis for the team, but every week you're checking to see if that piece of work or that direction the team's going in, is it moving the needle? That's a really clever method I learned from my old boss in Shopify, is that you kind of check in with the teams on a monthly basis about how we're performing, but every week you're checking in just for a mental note to understand, is this work pushing the needle? If it's not, you can intervene very quickly, which was a kind of an iterative approach to, I don't know, achieving goals. And that's something that I stole from her, and I'm always using that. The reason why is because if you could spend weeks trying to achieve, I don't know, an increase in conversion rates, for example, And if you're only checking monthly, you've already wasted like 3 weeks. So it's it's good to check in on a weekly basis. I normally do it every 2 weeks because that's enough time for user behavior to change and increase substantially. If it's not moving, then step in with the teams. Hey guys, we'll probably look at this and steer you another way because it's not working.
Is it? Are you? So when you're talking about the team and and how you're steering them, is that a part of your assessment process? How fluent they are in data? How they are looking at data, or?
Normally, I would expect them to get there. So most companies I've joined, this is brand new to designers, and it just takes a few iterations of me actually doing it with them. Eventually they get it, and now they're telling me like on a weekly basis, hey, it's not moving. We probably should
that's something.
So, but I don't expect them to get too deep into it. I just want them to understand, what you're trying to achieve with your work, other than a really exceptional, usable solution. That's great. Yes, you're supposed to be doing that. But if you want to be a more valuable designer, you need to understand how it's affecting the business. And now the sky's the limit for you. So it takes a few iterations to get there. But normally that's my expectations.
What I think is great that, especially in if we're talking about digital products, like you still have very immediate feedback, I can imagine. Like if you change something, you mentioned Shopify, sorry.
I do that all the time.
You mentioned Shopify. Like you get the immediate response if you change something online, if or like maybe also at N26 if you like do an update on the app for example, and you I actually imagined when Trade Republic did the like new it was just like a color switch.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, the like some kind of color switch, and there was like immediate. Even I like saw that like online.
Take Figma. Take the UI update of Figma.
UI 3 or
like, yeah, I think 3.
Yeah, UI 3.
The entire community was just
like there was immediate like okay, you gotta reverse that. It's like and I can imagine it's very nice to work with that like immediate feedback loop, or like more or less immediate feedback.
Yeah, the pros and cons, right? You change something too suddenly, kaboom! What the hell? But different industries. So Shopify, e-com. So yeah, it was highly experimentational. So you made changes. We did a lot of A/B testing. So it was very normal to not fall in love with your designs and just churn it out and see what works. Great, it's working. Let's double down on that. What's not working, you kind of throw it out. With more the fintech, it's you're trying to minimize risk, but also increase the security of any action users want to take. So you have to probably release that to a smaller catchment of your customers. Then you roll it out to like everyone. So, but to your point, we did change some stuff in our home feed in 26, and yeah, it was an uproar. Like, oh my gosh, the app is going down.
What do you do then? Like, do you like? How do you decide on, well, okay, they're going to get, like, we're confident they're going to get used to it? Because, like, people and users, like, we like to be comfortable.
Yeah.
Like, and if we are used to something, we like to stick with it. Regardless, maybe if it's the smarter or easier solution.
Or you maybe need it in your rollout plan.
Exactly. Like if, imagine there's an update, first response is, well, okay, we don't really like it, but do you immediately reverse it? Or it's like, okay, well, let's see, like in a week, in 2 weeks? Or like, how do you find like the sweet spot between, well, okay, like we really gotta reverse that? Or
it depends how much pressure is coming from the socials. Yeah, it's out. But no, we definitely don't change it immediately. It has to, I don't know, go viral if it's that negative, but it's never really happened. Good question. Have we ever had a rollback? We may have had one-on-one feature, but so anyway, so this is it. So what I've noticed is when you do release something, the amount of people that do complain, it's a small minority of them. Yeah. But as we know, like negative feedback is way louder than positive feedback. And then you get some users that go, okay, it's a change. Can I still do what I want? Yeah, it's all good. Yeah. So that's the power of social media. 4 people can make something go viral.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
You know, so
It's true.
but what we would look at is just how is it tanking any of our metrics. So in that particular case, where something was rolled back, it was tanking like the card usage. So we put it back immediately.
Mm-hmm.
And who decides on the metrics? Is that decision mainly done in design or like in the product teams, or is that something that management says?
It normally comes from the very, very top. So the business owners, they say, okay, this is what we need to target this, and then it's up for the product teams, which includes like tech, UX, and product managers. They have to decide, okay, how do we start to attack this? Which is kind of a modern way of approaching it. Yes, PMs have more say in how we get there, but the way we're quite collaborative in terms of understanding what we need to do to move it, it's kind of a shared responsibility, which is it's nice. It's different because you're like, whoa, am I actually accountable now for? Yeah, you are. So it kind of turns you into like these mini business owners within the teams, and
so that's it's similar to a discussion we had some hours ago. I see a huge trend towards breaking the silos of this is UX, this is dev, this is design, this is research, this I don't know what, and bringing it together to product teams more or less, and really building products. It ties in there quite well that you're then accountable. So you're building a product, which means you're running that small business. It's interesting.
And I think it's could also be a very motivating factor to be like. I mean, it certainly has its, I would not say risks, but I think it's a good thing if people feel like they have like immediate contribution and also, I mean, control to some degree, like over what's happening. What I was wondering is, I mean, it seems like, or like more or less obviously, like data is something that's super valuable for whatever company. Like, how do you make sure?
Do you remember Jan Brecht saying, as Adidas CIO, data is the new oil?
Yeah.
20 years ago.
Jeez, yeah.
Nice win.
Yeah. You know that quote actually, somehow it made it into GFK as well.
Yeah.
Everybody was saying it.
Yeah, data is the new oil. And it made it now to Mercedes-Benz. So.
I'll keep that as well.
Well, that's 20 years ago.
How would you say that in German? Data is the new oil.
Oh, you would not say that. You would say Daten sind Gold wert.
Yeah.
I think so. Which translates into data is new gold, or is gold.
Okay.
But it's the new oil. I think new oil is way more powerful as it's this oil rush.
Yeah. Like it's more. Like
all these data scientists all popping up.
Yeah. I'll take.
Sorry.
No, good. I was just wondering. I mean, how do you make sure, or like how do companies or your organization make sure that like those stay like. Obviously, you have to make it available to some degree to a majority of the organization so that people are enabled, that they know why they do things, how to argument with business and stuff. And how do you make sure that not everyone knows everything and doesn't take all the insights or like maybe data as well with him if he's going somewhere else? I can imagine that. Or is that a thing that people think about, or is it just like, well, okay, it doesn't really matter. We can't like... We don't have like leverage to keep them from doing it.
Well, luckily, all of the companies I work for, they've always been huge corporations, so everything has to be done on their servers in house. There's only so much you could take. I mean, apart from your memories, I mean, we can't erase people's memories.
Yeah, true. That's true. Not yet.
But there's also, not yet. You're scary.
Like,
where's the exit?
Men in Black, like you're not gonna know where to go.
Yeah. But also, I mean, there's a non-compete clause in most. Depending on if you're in the same industry, there's normally a non-compete clause anyway. So within 6 months, that data is already old anyway. But you can never really make sure. I mean, there's lots of devices in place to prevent you from copying data or accessing it from somewhere else, apart from the company premises.
Yeah.
But it's super hard, to be honest. I don't have a
There's no
concrete answer.
But if you say, well, okay, I mean, 6 months. If you think about offboarding and onboarding, like if someone manages to like take relevant things with them and then like basically rebuild something somewhere else. But I liked what you said before we like started recording. You said that I think we had the comparison between Adidas and Nike, where you said like Nike is very like US, like from the culture mentality, very US driven. Adidas is a German company. Like Nike sells a story, whereas Adidas is very data driven, engineered focused. It felt like you, and maybe I'm not right, you like the Nike approach more.
Oh wow!
That's just a suggestion from my end.
That's rough.
Do you think, or like, what's your take on that? Like, is it how much does data count when it comes to sheer usability, user experience? Like, is the story something, or maybe is the story something that's more important, regardless if it's like, super data focused and data relying?
The story will help you sell. It will help it go viral and all that other nice stuff. The science will make it useful to some people. And Adidas have always loved their products. Like they had what was the basketball shoes that were called Light something?
Crazy Light Explosive.
Someone's awake. So they were really, really light shoe. And if you compare that to a Nike shoe, I think at the time the LeBrons were out. They felt like a brick in my hand. But when you had the Crazy Light, you're like, holy shit, these are actually, can I swear, is that right?
Yeah, it's all right.
Like, it was really light, but the story that came in Crazy Light is really light shoe. But LeBron's shoe was, the king has arrived. This is the greatest shoe ever. And you could be like LeBron. And they were portraying all these like really muscular, powerful athletes, all these highlights of LeBron doing stuff. Yeah. And the Crazy Light had a guy just running really fast. And
that's it.
How does it relate to me? So
I think it's a matter of how you're curating your engineered products, how you're curating that, and Adidas is more focusing on the product itself, versus Nike is more focusing on the emotional. At least from my perspective, is more building that emotional, I don't know what, and not really focusing on the products. And you could see that as a strength or as a weakness, honestly, because if you're really jumping to the digital product, if I have the guts to really say, I can take a look at all my KPIs. I don't need to tell a story. Yeah. We can really deep dive into that. That's quite brave. It could as well be okay. As Apple is doing, they're building that ecosystem. You're not really looking at data at all, but more buying that emotional component. It's as well good. So it's.
And if you have to decide, like, what you go for?
I'm always Adidas.
So you're okay. So.
I'm torn in between now. But another example is the Fuel Band. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
The algorithm it tracked for your steps. There was a lot of people debunking it on YouTube, where you could put it on a table and kind of just shake it, and it would register as a step. Now we had the wrist, the smartwatch. We had the smartwatch, but we also, what was the wristband called again? God, they're gonna kill me for not.
I don't know.
FitSmart. There we go.
FitSmart. Yeah.
We had FitSmart, which was, the algorithm was correct. We had a really good team of mechanical engineers. They figured out how to really track like real steps. Running. They did that, but then we could never figure out, why does Fuel Band sell so well? They spend there's a massive budget of marketing. Again, huge story behind it. But do you think Nike cares too much about if it's correctly tracking how many steps you take? Because as far as they're concerned, a lot of people are buying it. A lot of people are being active they don't really care too much. Some do, but for us, we're like, no, if you measure, we got both. We have a Fit Smart and we have a fuel band, and we ran for 10 miles. Our one registered 10 miles and this was like 8 miles. This is wrong. But the reality is the masses, they want to be excited. They, especially with sports and data, people want to be inspired to do something. They want to be inspired to move. They want to aspire to be the best athlete, which was, I guess, was LeBron, Kobe at the time. They want to be the best runner. So this is what's going to make people buy. Like we look at Apple now, they're known for the superiority of their products, but there's a ton of Android and other devices that actually do way more than what Apple does, but they just have that aspirational like feel to it. So
I mean, maybe it's also a matter of persona and target group, I'd say, because I can imagine, I mean, I'm not a pro athlete and I never was, but I can imagine if you were a pro athlete and you'd say, well, okay, I really want to rely on like accurate tracking and proper engineered products, lightweight shoes and stuff. Then it's just a different target group.
So would you say all the good athletes are going with Adidas then? We should stop that.
We're not sponsored yet.
Yet.
Cough, cough.
Yeah, exactly.
So cycling back to the thing where you were saying accessibility on data and how you're basically keeping that data and things like that. It triggered some where I would like to ask you. So we're now having tools, AI tools to really analyze data, have huge amount of data sets accessible to users. How do you see that changing approaches in your day-to-day work?
Again, depends on the industry. In fintech, it's more about the data you capture. You need to give mechanisms to allow users to opt out of it, or if they do opt in, you got to give them the option to opt out, but also to destroy their data. So that's kind of what I've seen in the day-to-day, and also what we have to be very careful about in the fintech industry is not giving advice about what you do with your assets. We have to be very clear about that. So there's a lot of guardrails that prevent us from releasing or sharing too much data. It goes through a ton of iterations and or reviews, sorry. So that likely doesn't happen, but in the event it does, there's mechanisms there to say, well, you did opt in. If you want to opt out, we're more than happy to delete it, kind of the end. And that's in all industries. You see a lot of data privacy pop-ups. They're destroying the internet, cookie pop-ups, etc. They're all there, but there's always mechanisms to delete them. So how that changes how we approach things, not too much, but again, depending on the industry, you just got to be mindful of, okay, what is kind of within the limitations of capturing data and sharing data.
Okay, yeah, because so we see it in the in agency world that small things. So we're having data sets coming from clients, anonymous data, but basically having massive data, and we use AI to correlate. Is it a word? Yeah. Correlate data points and basically making it accessible. Earlier in the days, we would be extremely good Excel engineers, which we are not, to do that. So it makes it so easy to really work with data for us. And I think there's a huge potential. So if you jump out of those big corporates, but more coming into startups, that they could really utilize the data and basically have a data-driven UX approach, isn't it?
Yep.
Yeah.
Because when you mentioned it, like being able to easily work with it instead of having to, like grind through it and try to find connections or correlations or whatever. I would imagine, and and maybe you can give me some insights on that. I mean, AI is very good at recognizing patterns and stuff like that. Is that like how much is that a thing in terms of data yet, and how much like is there still uncertainties about not being able to like understand what happens like once you put data in it, and then you get like other like correlations or like organized data out of it. Is that already a thing? Is that something that that is, I can imagine that it is a thing, but to what degree is that used, or to automate things and
what I can say is that, I mean, I was at a George conference in November last year, and a lot of the fintech companies there, they're bringing AI in-house, so on their own servers, on their own platforms. That's already been gone through it's called like a new product review process, where the financial institution for that country, they're checking AI, how it's set up on your servers. So it goes through a massive review process. It has to be in-house per fintech company. In terms of analyzing the patterns, again, depending on who you speak to, they'd probably question where did that data come from, the data points that and the patterns that it's recognized. You'd have to triple, double check that anyway. Then there's the data still. I mean, AI still feels quite new in terms of how you actually bring that into your everyday work, because it's the trust factor.
The transparency as well. Like you put in what's happening,
fintechs.
and then you get something else.
So he's like, where did you come up with these data points? Well, AI told me. Okay, so you mean I don't need you? So
that would have been my next question.
There's that aspect as well. Like, at what point do we trust these AI machines so much that we don't need people behind it? And if you take ChatGPT, when you put in some prompts, hey, give me a quick birthday message, and it will just over explain it and over like complicate the message. You can train it to get there, but again, it's just that trust factor. Do you trust humans or do you trust machines? So I don't know when that would actually be a thing where we put more trust in the AI than we do humans. So when I worked at GfK, we worked on a recommendation engine, which was, it was mainly me. Yeah, sure. Shameless plug. All over my portfolio. But we had massive data sets on, for example, BMW. Go with Sony, actually. That's the one I remember. Sony has got a massive portfolio of TVs and selling within the UK. And my job was to take that data. We had signals regarding how the portfolio was performing. So maybe 55-inch TVs in the UK is doing really great, like second half of the year. But the recommendation engine that I built, it had to describe it in a way that allowed a business or a sales manager to look at that and just understand, okay, this TV is doing well, but they don't really, they know it's AI, but it sounds more like a person. So it's quite content heavy as well.
Yep.
So you have to write a certain way that makes it feel like it's an advisor to you, as opposed to data says this, go.
Yeah.
So
like rather than having a blind trust that you need to put in. So all in all, like good news for all the data analysts out there. Like we're not yet in a situation where we can just like take the data and then like run it through some kind of model or automatism, and then like you get whatever you as like designer or UX designer or, need and go with it. It's more like still talking to people and okay. That's,
but I'm trying to remember. There was a podcast I heard, a clip of one on LinkedIn, and he was doubling down on why people are so afraid of AI. And it is a tool. It's a hammer. It's an axe. Whatever. Right? You really should just be utilizing it. I mean, there was a time where they were looking at. It might have been ChatGPT, where they had them build a design for a mobile screen, and they built it. And I looked at it and thought, it's really not that great. But what it does is it gave a great foundation for an app, and you just build on top of it. So my advice would be to people, not that you ask for it, but it's just to utilize AI. Like, it's a tool. Use it. It it just removes so many steps from the process, or it can speed it up for you.
It is a tool. So similar as InDesign was a tool to basically position letters in the right format. It's basically a tool.
Yeah, I think that's a great take to close it, because I think we're already.
But I have one question. One question left. So you're a basketball enthusiast, I think. Are you watching NBA?
Yeah.
Are you watching NBA with the real-time stats?
Not really. No, I'd have to use the laptop to do that.
Yeah.
But I'm checking the stats at halftime. I'm checking it after the game. If I've missed the game, then I'm really into the stats. Okay, what happened in the first quarter, third quarter? Why did he only get 10? What happened? Oh, yeah, he got injured, or he's in foul trouble, or this person was guarding him. So I'm really into it from that aspect. So metrics is like part of my life, isn't
it? Did you ever try the real time calculations on percentages? On the shot percentages?
Not yet. No.
Because that's the only thing where data is really killing the experience in my personal point of view. So you should try that. I'm quite interested in how you see that.
Yeah, I'll give it a try, because similar to you, I just love the rawness and the spontaneousness of the game. And when you put data into it, it's good to know how they're performing, but it doesn't necessarily predict how they will perform at the end of the game, because someone could start really amazing and then 2 minutes later they're super tired and they're missing everything, and you're like, is this the same person that started the game? So yeah.
Nice.
That's
Marcus, that was really, really amazing. So many thanks for your time.
It went too quick.
It really went.
We could definitely have follow-ups.
We'll have a follow-up. So we're gonna be in Berlin regularly. I'd say.
Yeah.
So happy to have you on board for a second time.
Nice.
But it was it was great. It was awesome having you here. And
made me all feel comfortable. It's nice.
Oh, that's great.
Amazing.
Happy to hear. So thanks a lot, and hear you next time.
Many thanks.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Bye bye.
Ciao.